Good morning, everybody. Welcome to 2025, the new year. Happy New Year to everyone. I hope you had a restful holiday and some time to break. And we're back into the first week of term. It's been quite a busy week, various things going on. And thank you for joining us here on Friday Focus on the 10th of January. Again, just as we have previously, if it's the first time in, thank you for joining us. Please like and share the conversation. We intend to have around an hour's conversation. So from now, 7:45 on Friday, the 10th of January, through to 8:45. Dip in as much as you're able to, or obviously it will appear on my profile, which you're obviously where you're seeing this now. It will be there so you can dip back into it and see the conversation later on. We're also broadcasting on YouTube. So again, if you're there, thank you for joining us on YouTube. Please subscribe, press the subscribe button. It helps us in terms of all that we're trying to do with this conversation. Now, this morning, a slightly different conversation. Again, every conversation has its differences. My guest this morning, I'll introduce to you in a second. This series that we've been working through, looking at the whole subject of inclusion. This morning, a mutual LinkedIn connection introduced me to my guest today, AJ Ahmed, and we've had conversations a couple of times over the last few months leading up to today, and I hope the conversations will continue. But I'd like to welcome AJ to the screen. AJ, thank you for joining us this morning, and your input on inclusion is anticipated and valued. Thank you. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Chris, and welcome everyone else.
So, AJ, tell us a bit about yourself. Tell us a bit about yourself and your journey to this point.
Yeah, so I was, born and raised in Liverpool in a household of four. Both me and my older sister are completely blind. I've got another older sister and an older brother who aren't, so it's just me and my sister who's 1 year older. So both of us are blind, which was quite tough for our parents because our parents sort of emigrated to the UK in the sort of 60s and, not very educated. So it was obviously all new to them. It was new to everyone, but they didn't really advocate for us. They didn't really know how to. We were kind of lucky being from Liverpool. There was actually a blind school in Liverpool, St. Vincent's, which we went to, and that sort of really helped shape my life. So I did my schooling at a specialist school for the blind growing up. And then went on to a specialist college, which was in Hereford. There, I played football. Football's always been a big part of my life, probably because I'm from Liverpool. It's a footballing city. So I actually represented England and Great Britain. So I'm a retired Paralympian. I went to the captain England and GB in the Beijing Paralympics. So a lot of my I spent about 11 years playing for England and Great Britain. So a lot of my sort of experiences are based around my sport and that sort of stuff. I then went on to mainstream university, which obviously we'll talk about. But my experiences there was, quite different to my previous education. Once I finished uni, I started working as assistant technology company through various roles, really. Started sort of testing software and making sure it's accessible, no bugs and that sort of stuff, all the way through to technical support roles and then trainer roles. And then moved on to working in the sight loss sector for a charity as a technology coordinator. So that was everything from teaching people how to use technology, predominantly sort of older people who are not familiar with it. And it could be really simple things like smart home gadgets, just to be able to turn on the lights, for example, or sort the heating out. And then following that, I decided to set up my own business, which was AAT Solutions. doing very much similar, training people on software, not just visually impaired people, anyone with a disability, neurodiverse, that sort of thing, with, mind mapping software, dictation software. And plus also as part of, another string to my bow, as part of what I do is deliver talks for schools and businesses, regarding accessibility and raising awareness, really. So yeah, quite long-winded, but yeah, that's where I'm at.
No, AJ, that's an interesting journey, and I want to go back to the beginning of that description. So your life in Liverpool with your sister and your non-sighted sister and your two-sighted brother and sisters. How you talk about that time of going to that specialist school. Now, this conversation is focused on that inclusion ideal that we all have. I wrote a piece this week on the sort of agenda, and we know that Sir Martin Oliver, Chief Inspector of Schools, spoke to the Select Committee of Education this week, not timed or planned from our point of view in any way, but I actually spoke to the Select Committee about this whole idea of inclusion. And a lot of teachers have got this ideal, and I think we'll see the contrast in your story between the specialist provision and the mainstream provision. And I know you got some very strong feelings or views around that specialist provision and how positive it was for you. Tell us a bit about the school. I think you said St Vincent's in Liverpool. Tell us a bit about that school. Give us a feel for what that experience was like.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it really shaped me for, what I am today with my education and sort of the abilities and confidence I've gained. So it's a specialist visually impaired school for blind and what was known back then as partially sighted children, up from 4 years old all the way to 18. Because there was not many in the UK of its kind. There was quite a few dotted around, but not many. Many people would come and board, so they would stay from Monday to Friday and then go back on the weekends. I was kind of lucky. I had the best of both worlds in that it was a visually impaired school, but I wasn't, I didn't have to board because I was from the city. I would go home every single day, like anyone else, able-bodied going to school. But yes, because it was a visually impaired school, every single teacher, whether it was from dinner ladies to your head teacher, they all, must have been trained or what have you on dealing and adapting the education system. Even like when I talk about the dinner ladies, I would remember like a 4-year-old going there and they're teaching me how to eat with a fork and knife properly, that sort of thing, and etiquette and all that sort of stuff. Like a lot of blind people, and a lot of people don't know this, when you can't see anything and you don't have that visual stimulation, you do get a lot of blind people who start sort of rocking backwards and forwards because the brain's not stimulated. And I even remember that they used to tell you about that, to say it doesn't look very good and etiquette and stuff, which, people might say, is that a bit harsh or that sort of stuff? But, to get on in life and get a job and be successful, you need to be aware of these things and how things look and all that sort of stuff. So right down to those little minute micro things, we learned a lot. And it wasn't just about education. Sport was a big thing for me. Like I said, so a lot of that was honed at St Vincent's. Life skills as well, so it's not about learning how to bake a cake, but it was more geared at, well, how do you make your meals, and then again, when you're going off to uni as a young teenager, 19, 20, how to, be independent. So those life skills were, really, really important.
That's really interesting, and clearly it was successful because you went off to uni and you set your life up. So there are things that have gone on there that have landed. They've done what they needed to do. Tell us about. We've had the chance to talk about this. So the kind of ideal of the English education system is that as much as possible is done in the mainstream, and you've got some very clear experiences and views around the benefits of that specialist environment. Tell us a little bit about that. I mean, you told me that you found the kind of that whole idea of who was reading the Braille the quickest, or is that how much of that is in your sort of DNA in the sense of your competitive heart, and how much of that is about the specialist provision?
I mean, yes, it is. I'm competitive by nature, so for me, it really suited me. But I think everyone is, deep down. And so, I mean, what I said to you previously is when you're at a specialist school, whether it's a visually impaired school or different disabilities, you're competing against your peers. And I don't mean competing because you're having competitions, but if you're 5 years old and you're learning to read and write, let's say I'm not saying it does, but as an example, let's say as a visually impaired or blind person, it's taking you, 6 months or something to get to a certain level. If you're in a mainstream and all your kids are the same age or on book 3 and you're still on book 1, as a kid, that's going to dishearten you. You're going to start thinking, am I good enough? Am I clever enough? But actually, it's not that. It might just be that you need a little bit longer because of certain things that are going on. When you're in an environment where people have the same disabilities as you or the same, problems or that sort of thing, you're more on a level playing field. So you don't get that, that disheartening feeling. Equally, you learn a lot as well. So if I'm at a mainstream school and let's say it's just me and I'm learning something, if I can't do it, depending on attitudes around me with teachers, but even my attitude, I might just think, well, it's just because I've got a disability, I can't do it. If I'm at a like-minded school with people with my same disabilities and they're doing it, then I can look at that and go, well, no, I can do it because they're doing it. So you can look up to your fellow peers and you can use them as role models or examples. Well, if they're doing it, I can do it, or they're doing it this well, I can at least have a go. And I think that's really underestimated in the education system, in my opinion.
I think you're right, and that we know from all the education research, we know that peer influence is even just from societal basically, we know that we are impacted by our peers massively. So I will say, AJ, that in our conversation previously, that perspective that you brought has challenged my own thinking around it, because as an educator, we can be very clear that we're mainstream inclusion is a way forward. It's about providing an equal service for all, but you bring a perspective which I think is extremely valuable, and all of us need to evaluate that impact. And you left me thinking significantly, where it's all right to look at it from a helicopter view, but it's actually the peer view that matters. And that, look, just how did this get to you being a Paralympian? And so I know you said it very quickly, and I just want to come back to that life experience. You went to Beijing, you led the football team. You're a Paralympian. What was that like, and how? I'll come back to uni a little later, but just that it's a wonderful opportunity and a wonderful experience. Tell us a bit about it. How did you get to it?
Yeah, so I mean, predominantly, I just used to play football by myself or people on the streets. I used to have a ball in those days because I didn't know blind football was a thing. So I just used to play and started off putting a plastic bag over the ball. And again, we talk about adapting things, and that was just my way of, plastic bag rattles, a ball, wrap it up. Yes, it's not very good. It doesn't roll very well. Then that moved on to, let's play on gravel because then I can hear it. And then obviously, because I went to a specialist school, then I realised, a little bit later on, when I was about 9, 10, that you can get a ball with ball bearings. So that's what I did. I used to then just buy my own little 50p balls, little flyways, and take the little cap out and push the ball bearings through. So a lot of my early childhood was spent playing football. There was no coach, nothing like that. It was just me on the streets playing myself. Then when I was about 12, 13, I got the opportunity to play just in annual blinds tournaments across the country with my school, which really gave me the taste for that competitiveness, playing against other people who were blind, seeing their level, then that drive of, wow, they're good. I need to get to, I want to get better. Again, not really because I didn't know international football exists. I just thought, yeah, just blind kids playing football, but still that wanted me to get better. Then when I went to college when I was 18, that again was as I touched on, a specialist college for the visually impaired. So that was RNC, Royal National College for the Blind in Hereford. And I remember, you like at uni, you have your induction weekend or week, what have you. And this fella, another Scouse lad, his name was Tony, and he was the manager. And he was talking about the sports that they do. And if you want, you can have opportunities. And he said, and we do have an England blind football team. And I just remember as soon as he said those words, I just remember thinking, wow, I'm getting on that. And that might sound cocky or arrogant or what have you, but it was just my thinking of, not I'm going to get on it tomorrow, but I'm going to do everything that I can to get on that. That's my goal. And yeah, because I was at that college, they had monthly tournaments and stuff. So I joined the RNC team. And within 6 months, I was selected to play for England. So, as an 18-year-old, I was then swanning off to like European Championships in France, and it went really quick. And actually, it was a bit tough to begin with because there's this cocky little lad from Toxteth in Liverpool thinking I'm the bee's knees. Then going up a level, even, playing with international footballers. And that was a bit of a shock to the system. That took a bit of getting used to. But again, then it was that, right, I need to step it up even more. But it was that drive and determination. And then eventually, so I've played in about six European Championships, 4 World Cups, captained my country, 5 silver medals, and then had the honour to captain them and so it was Great Britain's first ever participation in the Paralympics under blind football, and I went out as captain in Beijing. So to do that will always stay with me. It was just something unbelievable, and at the time I didn't really think it was. I took it all in my stride because, to be honest, it was all about playing, doing the best I could, concentrating on what I had to do, my job. But it's only afterwards, when you finish, when you hang up your boots and you look back and you think, that was incredible.
Yeah. I mean, that's that's true for anyone. But where do you think the seeds of that grit were sown? So at Hereford, you see an opportunity. That there's something in us all that kind of sparks that. Yeah, I'm going to do that. That's. You think it was the streets of Toxteth that's where it began?
Yes, I think so. But also, I do think my just me being blind played a part to it, because I always had this thing that I wanted to prove, not really to anyone else, but to myself, that I could do something that a sighted person's doing. We talk about the specialist school and I went to, that's specially adapted, but I even remember one lesson, I must have been about 10 or 11, possibly, and we were making clocks, and they said, you can make whatever clock you want, you can, and I said, I'm going to make, and it was probably more of a joke more than anything, I said, I'm going to make one that's shaped like an octagon. And I remember the design technology teacher said to me, no, you can't do that. That's going to be too difficult for you. You're going to have to make a square one. And I know the other lads who are like partially sighted, they're making fun, like mad shapes and stuff. And I was thinking to myself, I didn't really want to make it, but because you've now said that, I'm going to make it. And yeah. I did. Yeah. And actually, I won the award that year for like the best creation really from that design tech for that year. So I think that's always been a thing for me, is just trying to prove that I can do something through my childhood. And then I think it just stuck with me ever since. Yeah. Probably too stubborn, me. That's what it is.
No, I don't think I'd ever use the word too stubborn in that. It's that, and it's something that's not talked a great deal about. And it's, in any education system, it's, we've got to get through the scheme. So just do the scheme as quickly as we can and get sort of finished to success. But it's that element of, I remember the same. And I was at a sighted school, and I'm not blind at all in the way you are, but I remember DT, and I was a DT teacher, so I can identify with that. I remember somebody saying, "Oh, no, you can't do that," and I remember the same feeling of, well, why not? Why? I'm going to give that a go. I'm going to prove that it's possible, and that's that sense of, that's the human grit of determination, of wanting to achieve something and doing it, and finding that you can be successful. And I think that's the heart of what inclusion is about, isn't it? It's that personal view of, you can be successful, and I genuinely believe that a state education system needs to provide success for every learner, wherever that learner is, or whatever position that learner is in. Success is possible, whatever that success is, and you've brought great success in your life through what you've achieved. I'm interested, what the difference between sort of mainstream university education and specialist provision within the school. What were the main differences? How did it feel for you? I mean, you've talked about that induction experience. What was university like? What were the challenges that you faced in that transition from specialist to mainstream?
It was actually a bit of a culture shock, to be honest. And when you're at a visually impaired school or college, you don't have to advocate for yourself, because everything's all thought out. You don't need to say, well, I need this in this format. I need this in Braille. They know what to do. So, I guess it's just the same experience like a sighted person going to a school. The teachers know what needs doing.
Yeah.
When I went to university, that was all changed. Suddenly, I'm in a lecture room full of 80, 100 people. They're pointing at slides which I can't see. I don't have a brailler to take notes. I'm not getting notes in Braille. I then have to, have them emailed to me, which is then a completely different way of learning, because then you've got to read it either before the lecture or after. And then I'm not used to that. I'm used to looking at notes. Jordan lectures, I've been since I was 4 years old, looking at notes, Jordan, what the teacher's talking about. Yeah. That took a lot of getting used to. Because obviously by then, when I went to university, everything was then sort of moved to electronics. So I just had a laptop, and I really struggled to retain information because I was writing it on a keyboard, listening to my screen reader. So for those of you who don't know, I use a screen reader on my laptop, which will read out what's on the screen. And when you're hearing auditory information from a screen reader, you probably don't take it in. And I was just going through my uni education, not really taking in information, and I was thinking, why am I not taking that in? I was a bright lad at college and at school, and I could remember everything. And it was only years after I realised it was because I missed that Braille element where things were underneath my fingers that I could feel. I suppose it's similar to you're looking at something visually so you can take it in. And because I didn't know that was the problem, I couldn't then say, oh, well, I need to incorporate Braille. And because the staff didn't know that's an issue, and they can't say, I think the problem is you need to use Braille. Do you know what I mean? So that was one of the biggest things. The other biggest thing, again, I found, because I'd done sports science, and a lot of that was they had to do different coaching stuff. They had to play games and all that sort of stuff. And I was left out of all that. So as a 21, 22-year-old, that was probably the most time I felt most excluded at a university, which I'm at mainstream, which is ironic, given that obviously, that's what we want to do. We want to integrate people. When I was integrated, I felt the most, disconnected, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And and again, again, all I'm hearing, and that's why we're having the conversation, because I think it's important that we need to change the way so able-bodied people need to think the way that they're thinking, and obviously it changed the way you were approaching it. But one of the characteristics that you've survived with is that grit and determination. I'm going to do this. I'm a great admiration for you, AJ. It's that you've been successful, and it's inspiring. What do you think? I mean, you talked about your teachers in the school in Toxteth in Liverpool. I mean, obviously they came to school and they were teaching with that expectation of this is the environment I'm in, these are the needs that I need to deal with. You know, obviously at uni, the lecturers and the facilitators needed to think differently. I mean, were they aware that you, as a blind person, was coming into the course? Was that new to them, or is it just, or they'd not thought about it at all?
Yeah, it was completely new to them. So I was their first blind student who had done the sports science degree. And funny enough, following me, there was about three, four others since,
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, I kind of helped them pave the way. And that's, again, where I sort of had to really advocate for myself to say, no, this needs to be done differently. You need to start sending things electronically. I mean, it was a learning process. I mean, I have to say, so I went to Worcester Uni. They were really good with it, and they were happy to learn. I didn't actually talk about my two other unis that I failed at. So, you know, when I started Worcester Uni, I was about 22, 23. I went to two other universities, lasted 3-4 months on each. And that was simply because I couldn't get the provisions in place.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit younger then. So sometimes you've got to fail to sort of realize what didn't work. And again, because I wasn't used to advocate for myself, I wasn't sure why is it not working. And then by the time I went to my third uni, which was Worcester, I was a bit more clued up of this is why the first two failed. And I was able to advocate for myself. And they were a lot more receptive, which was good as well. So it worked because I was a bit more experienced and I sort of known what failed and what I had to do. But on the other hand, it helped that I had a university that were ready to listen and take it on board and, you know, and adapt. So it has to be a two-way street. If it's just one way, it's not going to work.
And AJ, that's thank you that you shared that, because I know that's a tough thing to say. I'm interested in the way that you captured that. You know, that because we used the word failure. Now, was it that the uni, the institution failed you? Certainly, I wouldn't describe that as you failing in it. Because it's what you've sort of followed that up with is that so much had to change, one in your own mindset, but their willingness to engage with your needs and do it differently so that your needs were met. That's an interesting conversation for every education organization to deal with. You know, I kind of feel you haven't named them, and I'm not, you know, I'm not describing them as failing, but in a sense the system failed you because it wasn't willing to be flexible enough for your needs. Does that ring true, or am I wrong there?
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I suppose I used the term failing because that's sort of what was, you know, yes, I wasn't turning up to lectures, but the reason I wasn't turning up because I wasn't getting the support. I was losing the confidence. I was losing this is not for me. I'm not enjoying this. Sat in a room, not sure what's going on. From their point of view, they're seeing someone who is starting not to engage anymore and that sort of stuff. And like you said, I didn't know how to, at that time, say what I needed because we weren't really sure. Because again, I came from a specialist school where everything was just put on a plate for me.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I was lucky in that aspect. Maybe there's a part where there could be a bit of a transitional period where you sort of learn what, you know, it just came as a shock. It came all of a sudden from two amazing education institutions where everything's all put out on a plate, everything's all done. You don't have to think about anything apart from getting on with your education to then going into nothing's done for you. And you've literally just got to start from scratch and do it. And I think, yeah, I mean, looking back, like you're right, maybe, you know, I don't think it was a failure. It was more of a learning curve to then take to my third uni to, you know, to then be successful. And like I said, but that only worked because they were willing as well. Because, yeah, the other two, it was more about, it wasn't about how can we help you? It's you're not doing it. It's not good enough type of thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And that I'm going to transition on to the work that you're doing now in the AAT work and your work with schools, but that sense that there's an appreciation of. Actually, let's go back to what I've heard from you is that the specialist provision actually showed you what was possible. I can be successful in this, and that's given you that grit, and then the challenge of people not thinking that they need to change their practice. I think that's very true, and it's not just about your condition. You can't see in the same way that sighted people can, but their inclusion in its broadest sense applies to all sorts of things, and there are reasons why young people don't access education, whether it be social, emotional, mental or health issues, physical health issues, that all of those cause disengagement. So you're now working with schools, you're talking to groups of children and teachers. We've not kind of got into that detail. So how are you working with schools now?
Yeah, so what I try to do is do talks, sort of anywhere around the UK for schools, and I talk to it's a bit like a long assembly that I do with the kids, just about disability, being visually impaired, and I do little exercises with them, and show them how you can sort of just overcome different things and use different parts of your brain. Some simple things I do is I get a can of Coke in one hand and a can of Diet Coke in the other, and I get them to mix it up, and I can tell them which one's which just by touch, and just sort of bringing that sort of sense of you can use different skills to achieve the same task. Yes, you use your eyes, but I use my touch. And then what I actually do is I get one of them to close their eyes, and I show them what to look out for to tell a difference between a Coke and a Diet Coke, as an example, with touch. And then I get them to do it, and then they can do it, and it just shows to the rest of them, we've all got these skills, but yes, we don't need them, probably because we don't need to, but we've all got them, or we've all got some sort of skill. So it's about opening your minds and awareness that everyone's got these talents that we can make use of, and just because you might have a disability or what have you, it doesn't mean you can't do something. It might mean you have to do it in a different way, but it doesn't stop you doing it.
Yeah. And it's fascinating that I just that sense that you're through need, your other senses are heightened, and in a sense is. Well, it's the lack of those that are sighted that will rely on one only, and through training and through what you've described, they can be restored or heightened in their abilities. What kind of response are you getting from schools? I mean, are you working with you've just talked about working with children. What's the response from the teachers? What's the response from the school leaders in that environment?
They really enjoy the sessions, to be fair, and I really get really positive feedback about it, and it's actually funny because sometimes you think the sessions, the teachers get more out of it because they're like, wow, I just didn't know that you could be able to do that. I never thought about it before. And these are experienced teachers who've been teaching for years, and it just make you think that actually, well, if you didn't know, what would have happened if you would have got someone with a disability in your school? Do you know what I mean? It's not their fault, but it just shows the system and what we need to do. And there's still so much to do about awareness that when people have a disability, that actually what they're capable of. Because I think one of the problems you get, and I still get it all the time, is people think when you've got a disability, you're not capable of doing stuff. The amount of times that people will watch me use my phone and they just think that's amazing. And it isn't amazing. It's just normal. Do you know what I mean? All right, me playing football, that might be amazing. I get it. But me just using an everyday mundane activity, like you being able to just use my phone, that isn't amazing. The reason it looks amazing is because of low expectations from society, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and that's it. It is that setting of expectations. And I've listened to you this morning using the speech reader, and I'm not attuned to the speed that you listen. But just that sense of of the amount of information that's out there and that expectation that we can take these things on, we need to perceive it. I'm not going to use see is probably the wrong word there. We need to perceive it to understand and then reset our expectations. I mean, it's that, AJ, it's why I wanted to have this conversation, because we all need to hear it. We all need to reset on occasions what's possible. And I hear from you that you've learned and you saw what was possible, and then you go into that kind of next level of, I'm going to make this, I'm going to do this, I've got this determination to see it happen. But I would apply that across the spectrum. I know the school that I was involved in leading, I was vice principal of a large academy. We had a number of, they were sort of known as PNI, so physical needs and injuries, and we had a number of learners that came through the school, in wheelchairs, some partially sighted, some hearing impaired, but we tried to set the expectation that that all things were possible. I'm not going to speak for them and say whether we achieved that or not. I know I follow some of them since, because they became good friends, and I know they're doing brilliantly and doing some amazing things. So it's great to see, as in every child that I've ever been involved in teaching. Tell us a bit about the other work. So you've expanded into sort of technology, and I've just referred to the fact you're using technology all the time. How do you find the use of technology? Is it well developed? What are things progressing? Because we can see AI is growing and lots of conversation around it. It's not the answer to everything, but you're training people in AI. Sorry,
yes,
in assisted technology.
Technology. Yeah, I mean, technology is massive for me, and it's just because it enables me to get access to information, like use a mobile phone. The way I can use a mobile phone is because it's got built-in screen readers. Traditionally, I couldn't. I came from an era. So we talk about my education. It was great for Braille books, for educational books, but if I want to read a football autobiography from my favorite footballer, that was really difficult to do when I was growing up. I couldn't do it. By the time it comes out in Braille, it's like 15 years later. So, whereas technology now, everything's at my fingertips. If a book comes out, I can read it the same day. It's allowed me to, obviously, ultimately succeed in my favorite education at uni, and then through the workplace. But just even things like, with tech, there's apps out there that can help me read my post. We talk about AI now. AI you can use to get real-time information about, it has video real-time information. I can show a football ticket and say, I can have a conversation with it and say, what's this ticket for? It'll say that's for Southampton. I can say, what time's kickoff? It's so powerful, and especially now, I'm really excited with where it can go. It's never going to be the be-all and end-all of everything, and it's not going to be 100% answer, but it's so exciting where it can go, and it's such a great leveler. And then moving into like assistive technology. So I use a screen reader, which obviously enables me to use a phone or a computer. But there's so many other bits of software out there. There's screen magnification for people who maybe aren't blind, but just have partially sighted or, a little bit of sight loss. You can get screen masking software that can put tints on screens to stop screen glare, and, software, mind mapping software for people with, just people maybe who visual learners like to put things out, rather than write them down, or, people with ADHD who struggle, that sort of thing. Voice dictation. So there's so much out there. And actually what you're finding is a lot of this software is actually starting to get used more mainstream with just people anyway, because it doesn't just help people with, a disability or an impairment of some sort. Just anyone can benefit from it. And I think that's the beauty of where AI is going, is it's made for mainstream, but what's actually happening is a lot of people who are impaired or, suffer from something like that can even use it more and take more, and get more out of it.
Yeah. I know you've mentioned several things in there that mind mapping as a tool to get people thinking about links and possibilities. That's a friend of mine was a Tony Buzan mind mapping trainer at one point. And that was a very powerful tool, particularly used in English for making connections and building stories. And I did it as a technology teacher, using it to create ideas. There are interesting tools that can be used to get people thinking, wherever we are. And I guess I think the center of this inclusion idea is it's about leveling, but it's about it's about equity, not equality. We're not doing the same thing for everybody, but we're empowering each individual from wherever they're coming from to be successful in that position. And I think, in a sense, talking to you, AJ, you're blind, you don't see, but that hasn't stopped you from doing all the other things. Now, that doesn't mean another person might have an issue with social engagement, and that's school is difficult for them, and including them is about making the environment possible for them to see learning as a success. And it could be all sorts of things, and often is, certainly in the society that we work in, within the schools, bringing everybody in. It's about providing equity, not equality. Look, I'm fascinated. I could talk to you for a lot longer, but AJ, if they, in terms of what you're doing with schools, and the kind of experience that you've had in the extended assemblies, or whatever you're doing, and obviously we'll refer to that if people want to get in contact and invite you in. That's possible, and I'm sure desired. If you could change one thing, if there was a big thing that you could see as sort of needed within the system, the education system, where would you go first? What would you be looking for?
I mean, it's a really tough one, that, but I would say ultimately, I think it's that mindset, about what is that expectations, that when someone walks through a door with given any impairment, no matter what it is, that it's that mindset of things are possible. Do you know what I mean? That they can achieve whatever anyone else is. There's no limit to what they achieve given the right circumstances, the right opportunities, ultimately the right support system and environment around them. Like I said, I circle it back to my point about the expectations, and I do find it, and it's like I said, with adults and so many people in schools and teachers, like, just being wowed and, oh my God, I didn't realize a blind person could do that. Or again, it doesn't have to be a blind person, but anyone can do that. Didn't realize. And I think that's what it is that mind shift and mindset of, if you are disabled, that society as a whole don't think that that's something that's going to stop you from doing something.
Yeah. I agree with you entirely, and obviously I'm not coming at it from the position of your experience, but it's that it is that expectation that every child has got capabilities. They're different, every one of them are different, and we need to capitalize on every one of those. How do you think, how could we make that that difference? How could we change that expectation?
I mean, I think we need to sort of stop really, being scared of asking questions as well. And I see that all the time in society. I mean, kids are great for asking questions. And that's why I love speaking to kids, because they'll just ask questions and I love it. Whereas adults, we just seem to be frightened in case we're going to offend someone, or we shouldn't ask that. I mean, I hear when I take my kids to school and stuff, and I hear a little, an 8-year-old or something say, Mummy, Daddy, why has he got a stick? And I just hear the adult going, shh. So, but no, have these conversations, and as adults, we need to have conversations, about disabilities and expectations and all that sort of stuff. That's what is ultimately gonna, we need to change. So we're more aware, because that's the problem. It's that lack of awareness about what people can and cannot do. That sort of, I don't know, it's tough. It sort of inhibits us, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah. But just the ability to have a straightforward, non-judgmental conversation, talk it through. Yes. So what's next for you? What are you? I mean, you're clearly in a hotel room, I'm guessing, behind you. You're traveling.
That's right. Yes. So I'm training at the moment. So again, I go UK wide. So I'm in rainy, windy Manchester and snowy Manchester at the moment. But yeah, so I'm actually teaching someone who has due to diabetes lost their sight and was in employment, and now because of that, obviously has been off work for so long and is doing a phased return, but they just have no idea of now using their computer because they can't see. So teaching them how to use a screen reader and screen magnification to enable them to be able to do their job again. And what we don't realize is, if you lose something like sight, everything you've ever known can just disappear overnight. Do you know what I mean? How you do things. But again, it's about, and he's been kind of lucky that his workplace has been really good about it and looked at what is possible, hence where I've got involved. And that's the other thing, if your workplace isn't good about it, doesn't understand, actually, well, now you've lost your sight, let's see what we can do. It's more about, now they've lost their sight, they now can't do that job. Okay, you can't come to work. That's the difference. Do you know what I mean? Whereas his workplace was right, okay, well, that's happened. Let's see a way around it. Let's see what we can do. And there is a way around it. And often there is ways around things that we can look at and we can do, and people can still, live a fulfilling life and successful careers and, and education.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's about valuing the people rather than the commodity. They're not just a person because they can do something. They're a person because they're a person. And all power to you in that. That's a brilliant position. AJ, in terms of your, the sort of the two streams of what you're doing, obviously people can contact you through LinkedIn if that's where you are, because your profile is there and they can see you. In terms of what they would get if they were going to invite you into the school, what does that look like? How would they contact you? How much?
So you can email me at info@aatsolutions.uk, or alternatively you can visit my website, which is a bit more information on there. So again, www.aatsolutions.uk. Or just contact me on LinkedIn and we can have a discussion. So there's never a one size fits all. Sometimes I just do like a 10-minute assembly. Other times it can be a whole morning workshop, and you have group activities, and it covers all age groups. So it's very interactive. It's not just me talking because yes, that'd be really boring. So it's really engaging, and the kids take part and and have fun, and ultimately it raises awareness. And I still have teachers messaging me 6 months on and go, well, my kids are still talking about the day you come into school. And it's about raising that awareness, just about what people can do, and giving them open minds, really. I would say and that's the overall the message that I give the kids is, anything is possible if you work hard at it. Doesn't matter what you're struggling with. If you want something, given the right support network, you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And so raising awareness you've described, but what we're really talking about and what we've mentioned several times is the raising our expectations. That all things are possible. There, impairment does not stop you; it just changes the way you do things.
Just changes the way you do it.
And that sounds strongly in all that you say and what you've achieved. What's been the thing that that stays with you? So your school life, your football career, the things that you've done. If there's one thing that you sort of pause on a Friday night and think through, think, wow, that's really left me with a good feeling. What is that, AJ?
Oh, that's a really tough one, Chris. I mean, there's loads. Like you said, when you in the line of work I do, where I'm meeting people who, and I've met people who are about to leave their job, but they've had training sessions with me, and afterwards, their whole attitude and mindset changing. Oh my God, I can still carry on working. That is such a nice feeling. So you've just made a difference to someone, and not a small difference, a massive difference to them. So that's quite big. But I think still ultimately it's just looking back and knowing what I achieved with my football, captain of my country at the Paralympics, leading them out. I just, not many people have done it, so it's just something that I think will always stay with me. And to be honest, a lot of what I did during my sporting career, I take on, in my professional career as well. So again, when things are getting tough, or again, that resilience, that working hard, putting in extra hours, all that sort of stuff, it stays. So it sort of shaped who I am. So I'd have to say that. I'd say.
No, I think it's valuable, and it's you did it brilliant. It's and it's something you can sit with. But I think I also hear what you're saying. If you're making a difference to people's lives, that's immense. And look, AJ, I hope we could stay in contact. This is not just a process towards doing a Friday interview, but thank you for your input today. It's really valuable, and I hope people hear the heart and the soul of all that you've said. That said, of raising expectations and making a difference and empowering people to be who they are. That's is really powerful. Thank you. Really appreciate your time and your input. I'm just going to do the end bits, and then maybe we'll just have a conversation in a second. So thank you. So, all guys, thank you for being here. Just to say, and share the conversation we've just had. Valuable conversation that will speak into lots of our experience around inclusion in schools, particularly, but that whole idea of raising our expectation of what's possible is so powerful. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe. The conversations that we've got coming up every fortnight. So the next one in 2 weeks' time, on the 24th of January. We've got various guests on various subjects. We will continue with some inclusion input, but we've got other conversations that we're planning. If you are around and you want to comment on the conversation, or you'd like to connect with AJ, if you either email us at the message that's just going to appear at the bottom of the screen, so info@smartcurriculum.net, or calling the 01268 201 322, and my team will get back to you and we'll set something up. We'll certainly pass on to AJ, and obviously his email, info@AT Solutions, is he's already mentioned, but if that you please use that. So thank you for being part of the conversation today. We appreciate your engagement. Like, share, subscribe, and we'll speak to you soon. Take care.